Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm John M. Hawkins. The show is My Strategy. We're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Well, I'm very happy to be here with you today. My Strategy episodes are on Saturdays. They're live, and they are at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Today, we're going to be talking about life struggles that make us stronger. We're going to be talking about the life struggles, the things that don't kill you, hopefully make you stronger, the impact of struggling on people, the concept of post-traumatic growth, challenges that can help us grow, and also we're going to talk about ways that you can build your own strategy. Well, again, very happy to be here with you today. Saturday is a great day of the week to reflect on your strategy, but keep in mind that any day of the week is a great time to assess your strategy. Now, the My Strategy show continues to grow. We're on iHeart, iTunes, Player FM, YouTube, SoundCloud, Spreaker, and many more digital platforms. So if you'd like to listen to this episode in podcast form, you can do that. We also have a number of other shows that you can go and listen to. You can find me on most social media platforms. My Twitter handle is HawkinsJohn, and my website is johnmhawkins.com. And you're going to want to go there pretty soon because we do have a giveaway that's ending today at noon Pacific. So if you want to get in on that, you have a few more hours to do that. And just like anything in life, we need to have a strategy and a plan to help us reach our goals because the best laid plans don't always work. This week, I'm looking for your stories on struggling in some of the situations that you might have been in. Do you have a tip or a trick? Please send it to us. Would love to hear more from you. All right, so this week, we're going to be talking about the things in life that make us stronger. We're going to talk about what are those things in life. We're going to talk about resiliency in the face of adversity. We're going to talk about how some people always win while other people seem to lose all the time. We're going to be talking about some of the skills that you can start to develop when you need to become more resilient and deal with those tough times. We're going to talk about post-traumatic growth, and this is pretty interesting because post-traumatic growth is this concept where after you have a challenge to your life or there is a crisis, you have an opportunity to either flourish or sink. And so we're going to learn ways that we can set ourselves up to flourish. We're also going to talk a little bit about the fact that a certain amount of struggle in your life and adversity is good. However, there is an inflection point and a tipping point where if there's too much adversity, it's very difficult to come back from. But if you don't have any adversity, it's difficult to grow. So we're going to cover that today. We're then going to follow it up by helping you to develop your strategy and hopefully give you some good ideas in terms of ways that that you can grow from the adversity that you face. I want to start off with an article here. It's called, If It Does Not Kill You, It Will Make You Stronger. But are there limits? That which does not kill us, does that which does not kill us really make us stronger? On the surface, it seems like it. People who have experienced significant adverse events, like having to endure physical abuse, experiencing homelessness, or becoming the victims of a natural disaster, often suffer very painful, long negative effects, particularly in terms of their mental health and well-being. There's been lots of research on this subject that suggests that these individuals are likely to end up being more resilient after being put through the ringer. There isn't much evidence that they are better able to handle future difficulties with greater strength and adaptability and to rebound emotionally faster and more effectively. The author says, for the record, being resilient in the face of difficulty is actually the norm rather than the exception. Most people report they have to cope with some significant adversity in their lives, and the majority of them do not permanently suffer from it. By and large, we recover faster and better from hardship than we would expect, but there is a big difference between returning to a baseline after a negative event, becoming your old self again, and ending up stronger for it. The author goes on to say, and yet many of us have the sense that adversity does indeed foster resilience, that people who have been through a lot are actually tougher, better able to handle the curveballs that life may throw at them. The author says that research suggests that, yes, adversity does help you, but only when adversity strikes in moderation. I think that's the key here, is that, when we do talk about adversity and things that come up, if it is a moderate amount of adversity, we have the ability to recover. But if there's constant barrage of adversity, of negative pressure, that's when it becomes very difficult for us to come back and become stronger. And if there is not enough adversity, then we don't grow. So it's a very fine balance. And what we want to understand today is that is how things work, right? I mean, you have to have some sort of adversity, but if you don't have any, then, what is the right balance? It says research who conducted a study looked at the data from a broad sample of nearly 2,000 Americans. The average age was 49, but ranged from 18 to 101 years old. Participants filled out a measure of cumulative lifetime adversity, which asked them to indicate how often they had coped with serious difficulties or trauma, including major illness or injury, assault, loss of a loved one, serious financial difficulties, natural disasters, and more. It says here, not surprising, those who had experienced a lot of adversity had poorer outcomes on average than the people who reported no history of adversity. They were more depressed, more anxious, less satisfied with their lives. They were more likely to have physical or emotional problems that interfered with their ability to work and socialize. The real surprise comes when you look at people with relatively low lifetime adversity, 2 to 4 serious events or traumas. They reported having better outcomes than the people who had 0 lifetime adversity. They were happier, more satisfied, better able to cope with life's daily ups and downs. The author says this actually makes a lot of sense. When you are exposed to a limited number of significant stressors, you come to see a bad situation as more manageable, and you approach it with greater confidence that you will be able to get through it. If I can handle that, I can handle anything. However, when there is too much adversity, without adversity, you don't get a chance to hone your coping skills and develop the I can get through this sense of efficacy that will serve you when trouble comes along. Too much adversity, on the other hand, is likely to overwhelm your psychological resources, leaving you feeling less capable of coping when things go wrong. So he said, what wisdom can we extract from these findings? How can we benefit from them? The author says they think there are 2 main points. First, it's unwise to try and shelter someone completely from adversity. It's perfectly natural to protect our loved ones from bad experiences, particularly our children. But if you ever get to tackle big problems on your own, you'll never develop the confidence and psychological resources you will need to succeed. You're listening to My Strategy. I'm your host, John M. Hawkins, coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. When we come back, we're going to talk about how struggling in life can make you stronger. We'll be right back. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to My Strategy. I'm your host, John M. Hawkins. We're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Very happy to be here with you today on this Saturday. Today we're talking about life struggles and how they can make us stronger. Right before the break, we were talking about things in life that don't kill you, make you stronger. We talked a little bit about how too much adversity dampens the soul, the spirit, and we can't accomplish anything. No adversity, we are not as successful as we might want to be. And some adversity in the right amount can help us grow and prosper. In this segment, I want to talk about how this struggling in life can make you stronger. Sometimes, there's people who always seem to win, and it's never us. It's always somebody else. Then there's those of us who feel like all we can do is lose. But, we all have to go through adversity at some point. And once we understand how the process works, it can help us to develop a strategy so that my hope is that we all have the ability to win. I've got an article here by Patrice Foster. It says, struggles in life make you a stronger person. She says, struggles in life make you a stronger person, right? We all face uncomfortable situations at some point in life. There are people who seem to get all the winning cards, while you get dealt a terrible hand. Likewise, it's easy to start feeling bitter towards the people who get it all. The truth is that everyone has conflict with something, even the people who seem to have it all. She says, I know how quickly the streets can suck a person in. She also knows how quickly the cement can dry around their ankles. Just when you want to get out, something happens. Yet we're told, struggles in life make you a stronger person. Face your hard times now. That will make you better. The author, who is writing for teens in this article, says, bright young minds get stuck in bad situations, just like this year and year out, thanks to daily hardships. But you don't need to go down that road. She says, when you're down and out, there's always options. Life is a climb, but the view is great. She quotes Miley Cyrus. She goes on to say that life is not easy. Tempted to think that an ideal world where there would be no adversities, therefore, who has it bad cannot get sucked in by the streets. We have reached a point in history where things seem like they just can't get any worse. And yet, it appears that they do. But we need to keep remembering, struggles in life make us a stronger person, right? Struggles in life makes us a stronger person. She goes on to say, whenever the longing for a struggle-free world comes to me, she has to remember one of the most striking metaphors that she's ever heard about suffering difficulties in life. Struggles are like sharpening a knife. If you want the knife to work at its best, polish it with a sharpening stone. Little by little, the friction carves a new edge into the knife. And in the hands of a skilled worker, the knife will become sharper than ever. The beauty of this analogy is that it speaks of how struggles affect us, but also shape us in life, how we allow it to. I guess that's a good analogy there. Metaphor for sharpening of a stone and a knife. Before the break, we talked about too much adversity versus enough adversity. Well, if you need a knife to be able to do something, cut a piece of something, if you took a sledgehammer and bludgeoned the end of the knife to the point where it no longer resembled a knife and was really forged into a flat piece of iron, it's hard to see that you can do much with that knife. And many of us are faced with so much adversity, we feel like that knife that has been flattened, smashed to a point where there is no semblance of an edge at all. And then those of us who do have this knife and aren't sharpening that knife, well, if you continue to use the knife and there's no friction, there's no polishing, that knife over time slowly becomes dull. Sure, it still resembles a knife, but it doesn't really do much. So what she's saying here is that these little things that are coming to us on a daily basis are the things that are polishing the edge of the knife. They are the things that are sharpening it, that are helping us have a sharp edge. And if we don't have those little adversities, we don't have a sharp knife. I think it is important for us, though, to start thinking about this from the perspective of, how much is too much adversity? And that's where we also need to have people who can help us, people who can coach us and guide us along the right path. She goes on to say, struggles make life a stronger person, right? Struggles in life is not easy to overcome. She says, no matter how loud the street calls, you don't have the answer. We think of poverty as being subjective when it's relative first and foremost. It's not our birthright. You can change the scene, make a difference in your life first. By the same token, you must attempt to reach out and focus on others. You may be struggling with no food in the pantry. You just can't do anything right. Therefore, school grades are poor, possibly setting you back and forcing you back into another grade. Keep going. Be hungry for change. Break those barriers that seems impossible. Self-trust. Push through the hurt that doesn't look and don't look back. Get out and stay out above all of this. It is not going to be easy, but it is achievable. Now, I think from this perspective, she gives us some tips. Educate yourself. Don't give up. Successful people are going to be going through struggles too. Struggles in life do not have to be your downfall, according to the author. Accept them and let them become your own strength. Let them shape you. Take pride in what you have achieved with your life. What are your struggles? Talk to someone. Talk about them. Because when you start to socialize them, you might find that other people are in a similar situation to what you're in. You might find that others are experiencing some of the same struggles that you've experienced. And in talking about it and feeling like there's others in your situation, they might be able to share some stories, some strategies, some tips, some tricks to help you get past those struggles that you're facing. And I think the goal here is not to let us be bludgeoned to the point where our knives and tools don't have a shape, but really take a look at the situation from the perspective of, if you are in adversity, if you are in a position where you are choosing, or if you're choosing a path that's going to make things more adverse, think twice about that. Because when you do start choosing those more adverse situations and you don't get the help that you need, what that's going to do is that is going to put so much adversity on you that you may not be able to recover from it. And as we talked about in the first segment, we absolutely want adversity, but too much adversity, too much stubbornness, too much I can do this on my own and I can fix this myself isn't going to help us, isn't going to get us to a point where we can come back. And so that's where I think the balance lies. It's figuring out, how do we recognize when we are in a situation that if we continue down this path, if we continue to have this adversity, those struggles actually aren't going to make us a better person. Those hard times are not going to help us become better. Those hard times, those struggles, that adversity is going to put you in a situation where you might not ever be able to come back from. And therein lies one of those big challenges, is what is too much adversity? When is it good to have adversity and struggles and challenges? And then when is it absolutely so much that you just can't come back? So that's the challenge. How do we figure out when we are in that position? You're listening to My Strategy. I am your host, John M. Hawkins, coming live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. When we come back, we're going to talk about post-traumatic growth. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, John M. Hawkins, coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. We're very happy to be here with you today on this Saturday. My Strategy episodes are live at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern on Saturdays. Also want to let you know that we do have giveaways from time to time. And we have a giveaway that's ending at 12 p.m. Pacific today. So you've got about an hour and a half or so to enter. And then we're going to do that drawing for that. So if you want to get in on that, you can go to johnmhawkins.com, or you can go to my Twitter, which is HawkinsJohn. All right, right before the break, we were talking about struggling in life and some of the things that can help and hurt you. We learned there was an author who wrote a piece from a teen perspective and what they should be thinking about. In this segment, I want to talk a little bit about post-traumatic growth. When a crisis happens, and we know we are in multiple crises, it seems, in this day and age with regard to pandemic, civil unrest. We have lots of things going on. And so I want to talk a little bit about this concept of post-traumatic growth. And I've got an article here that talks about that. It says, life is full of struggles, and I guess I should say the author is Sushmitha Hedge. Life is full of struggles, she says, some easy, some tough. We may struggle to wake up in the morning or study for an upcoming test. We struggle with failures and illness, and struggle to cope with the loss of a loved one. And one of the songs on her playlist has lyrics that say, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." But she says that she just rolls her eyes. How can struggling make you stronger? She then says, well, studies actually show that it does. And psychologists call this post-traumatic growth. What is post-traumatic growth, you might ask? She says adversities happen to all of us, although some of us experience them more frequently or more intensely than others, but no one totally escapes them. When a crisis does happen, we can either sink under its weight or rise up and flourish. We can grow through the hard times and come out of the crisis better than before. Post-traumatic growth, PTG, is the form of positive change that people experience as a result of struggling with major life crises or traumatic events. She goes on to say some people are resilient, meaning that they bounce back after they are dealt with a difficult situation. However, while post-traumatic growth often leads to resilience in a person, it is not quite the same as resilience. PTG happens when someone who struggles to bounce back experiences a traumatic event, which makes them question their core beliefs, undergo psychological struggles, challenge their capabilities, and finally achieve a sense of personal growth. And that's what this show is all about, right? We're all about personal growth, personal development. She says PTG won't happen to someone who is already resilient in the face of trauma, since a resilient person won't be rocked to the core by such an event. So I guess she's differentiating between those who are new to experiencing traumatic issues and those who are resilient as the result of experiencing multiple traumatic issues over their life, and they're at a point where they've already developed that. So she says, what are some of the indicators of post-traumatic growth? When a person grows after overcoming a struggle, they undergo many changes on a fundamental level. To evaluate whether and to what extent a person has grown after a trauma, psychologists look for the following indicators. Personal strength. Adversities often increase hardiness and resilience, shaping how people handle subsequent challenges. People often pull strength and courage from misfortune after having been caught up in tragedy. They say, if I survive that, I can deal with anything. Greater appreciation for life. Experience hardships not only equips us to deal with negative situations in the future, but it also helps us cherish the positive things in life, such as when we survive a life-threatening illness, an event where we help a person appreciate the simple gift of being alive. In fact, she says one study shows that although people currently going through trauma show less productivity, they do have a proclivity for savoring events. New possibilities. People who have overcome major struggles develop a sense of the new possibilities that have emerged from the struggle, opening up opportunities that might not have been present before, or they were present but they didn't know to look for them. Relationships with others. While some people experience closer relations with specific people after trauma, Others feel an increased sense of connection to those who suffer, even strangers. And finally, spiritual change. A significant change in the beliefs of a person can cause a deepening of the spiritual life. Experiencing trauma gives people a new sense of purpose in life. Sometimes it goes beyond oneself and extends to the whole society. So what would you think might determine the level of growth? Not everybody who experiences it shows the same level of growth. This is because every person is different and goes through different types of trauma and lives under different circumstances in their lives. You're listening to My Strategy. I'm your host, John M. Hawkins, coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. When we come back, we're going to talk about greater challenges that can help you grow. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back, everyone. I'm John M. Hawkins. The show is My Strategy, and we're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. I'm very happy to be here with you today and glad you could join us. My Strategy episodes are live. They're on Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. We'd love to get your thoughts. You can send us an email to talk@johnmhawkins.com. That's talk@johnmhawkins.com. Check out my Twitter handle at HawkinsJohn or johnmhawkins.com website for our giveaway, which is ending in an hour or so. In this episode, we're talking about life struggles that make us stronger. We're talking about the things that don't kill you, how they make us stronger. How many times have you heard that, right? The impact of struggling on people. The concept of post-traumatic growth. We just covered that. Challenges that help us grow, and we're helping you to develop a strategy. I think that, challenges that help us grow are things that, we start off learning at a very young age. I'll give you an example of this. I've got an article by Nathaniel Lambert, PhD. The article is How Greater Challenges Help You Grow. I think when it comes to personal development, everything that happens to us throughout our life, from day one up till today, affects us. It affects how we deal with situations. It affects our attitude. It affects our mindset. Our mindset is shaped over the years. And once we end up in a fixed mindset and set in our ways, it becomes very difficult to change. And I think this is pretty interesting because Nathaniel takes this from an interesting perspective, and we'll get into it. He starts off with a quote by C.S. Lewis: "Hardship often prepares ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny." I guess, what is your destiny? Let's think about this today. He says, my blog post on the topic of being different is coming to a close soon. And in fact, he wrote a book about the topic, Standing Up for Standing Out. He says that if you are interested in a free Kindle version, that's available. He goes on to say, John Schwartz, a short writer for the New York Times, interviewed another short author, Stephen Hall. Hall said that small people are forced to learn because they can't get their way by sheer physical means. And when he means small people, he means small in stature, which puts on the pressure for smaller kids, short in stature kids, to cultivate other ways of exercising their will, either through verbal ability or a sense of humor. So here we have a situation where early on in life, you have kids on a playground. You've got the tall kids, you've got the shorter kids, you've got all different sizes and shapes of kids out there. And at an early age, those kids need to find a way to deal, right? And he says in this situation, those younger kids might either learn to be more verbal, and and that's their coping mechanism, or maybe they develop a sense of humor. He says he went on to say that dealing with adversity, having exposure to adversity early on, is very useful in how someone goes through their lives. They suggest that one actually becomes wiser and inoculated against stress by having to deal with it early on, just as a vaccination helps your body learn to resist germs before they can do your body serious harm. Now, I do want to say that it's everything in moderation. Too much adversity could have had unintended consequences for this smaller kid or short in stature kid. And no adversity might not have prepped them. So we want to be thinking about this construct so that when we start to look at our current situation, our current state, and how we're feeling, that we know exactly where we fit. Were you somebody who has had too much adversity? Were you someone who had no adversity? Or were you someone who had just the right amount of adversity? And that's what we need to do as we're thinking about building our strategy. He goes on to say, growing up because of trials can be compared to the oyster that has a little piece of sand lodged inside it. In response to this intruder, the oyster makes the most of its trial and makes it a beautiful pearl. Without the challenge or setback of having this uncomfortable piece of sand, the oyster never would have made the pearl. Now imagine if you took that same oyster and instead of putting 1 grain of sand in there, you just opened up the oyster and dumped it in a bucket of sand and closed the oyster back up, and the oyster had thousands and thousands of grains of sand. How is it going to live? You're going to choke it. It wouldn't have the ability to take that single pebble, that single grain of sand, and work it into a beautiful, magnificent piece of art. So that's when, if the oyster had too much adversity, it would suck the life from the oyster and kill it. If the oyster did not ever get a grain of sand in life, it would continue to live as an oyster. But there never would be that pearl. There never would be that beautiful piece of art that comes out as a result of that adversity. And I think that's what the author is saying here, is that we need to think of ourselves in terms of, how an oyster would react, or, sharpening the knife. All of these different analogies can provide context and help us with clarity and understanding where we are. He goes on to say, for example, he recalls instances when from his past when all of his friends were playing basketball without him, and he couldn't play because he was short and not very coordinated. But at the same time, playing made him feel extremely left out. He said, however, during those long periods, while his friends played basketball and game after game, he decided to go work on himself. He was practicing the piano, reading self-development books, focusing on excelling in school, and more. And these were very formative times for him, because he believed that without those times, he would not be the person that he is today. The challenge of being short in stature became a benefit to him, and he was able to grow and become a different person. You're listening to My Strategy. I'm your host, John M. Hawkins, coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, John M. Hawkins. We're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Show is My Strategy. Right before the break, we were talking about greater challenges can help you grow, and how some of those disadvantages that we have as children will impact our future. And so if you are a short in stature child, compared relative to the other children in the class, and let's say, for example, they're all playing basketball but don't invite you because you are not tall enough, then there's opportunities for you to go focus on other things that will help you become better, help develop your skills, and set you up for success. So that's what we've been talking about in today's show. In this segment, I want to talk a little bit about developing your strategy. Every day, we are executing our strategy. Every day, we are out there thinking, and we're either working on our plan or executing what's on our plan. We might be distracted and not doing anything that's on our plan. So in this segment, I want to refocus us and start getting us to start thinking about this systematic approach. And I have 5 steps to this systematic approach. The first is awareness. What are your vision goals? What are you trying to achieve? Then we need to assess and analyze. By assessing the situation and doing some analysis, we can figure out what steps you can take. We then strategize and plan. With some course of actions identified, you can start determining ones that will help you get to your goal. Implement your plan. Start executing on your courses of actions. What are these new tactics, these new strategies? And finally, support and evaluate. Is the plan working? If it is, great. If not, why not? How do we hold ourselves accountable? So today's topic is about adversity and struggling. We've talked about how too much adversity can absolutely bury us. It's like taking the oyster and taking a shovel full of sand, dumping it into the oyster, closing up the oyster, and throwing it back into the depths, hoping that it will grow thousands of pearls. Well, that's not going to work in nature, and it doesn't work with us. So be aware. Are you in a situation where you have too much adversity? Are you in a situation where you're like that poor oyster that is a shovel full of sand in it, cast to the bottom of the lake, bottom of the ocean, hoping that all these thousands of pearls will come out? Well, we need to understand, we need to assess, we need to analyze and figure out, is that where we are today? Have we been put under so much adversity that there is no hope, no possibility for us to grow beyond that? That's one situation. That will be your current situation. Are you that oyster with a shovel full of sand at the bottom of the ocean? Or are you that oyster that has been living a very nice life in the bottom of the ocean, and you have no grains of sand? You are down at the bottom of the ocean, just moving along, living your life, doing great things, sitting there, taking a look around, but you don't have the thing that you need to make this beautiful pearl, this work of art, and that is a grain of sand. Is this you? Have you been sheltered? Have you been coddled? Have you had such an easy life that you do not have any adversity? You have no challenges. It's possible that that's where you are in your current situation, your current state. Finally, are you somebody who has had challenges in their life? You have been given grains of sand early on as this oyster at the bottom of the ocean. And with this grain of sand that you got when you were very young, you have learned to create a barrier around it. You have become resilient by taking that grain of sand and coating it and coating it and coating it. And now you have this beautiful oyster that is in your possession, that you have developed because of that adversity early on. And as we start to think about where we are strategically from a personal development perspective, we have to know where we are in the current situation, in the current state. You know, where are you on the spectrum? Are you at a point where you've been overloaded with adversity and there's no chance for growth? Are you at the far end where you have just not had any adversity? Are you somewhere in the middle? Where are you on the spectrum? And once you've figured that out, that is when you can start to be strategic. Because when you know where you are, you now have the opportunity to put things in place to fix it. If I gave you a strategy and you were somebody who had way too much adversity and that shovel full of sand and you're sitting at the bottom of the ocean and I throw another adverse activity your way, you are absolutely going to be bombarded and run away. I mean, there's nothing you can do. You're at a saturation point. So I need to know where you are. If you're at that position, then maybe we need to provide you some flotation devices. We need to figure out ways to improve your condition so that you have the ability to grow. Good case in point is, being homeless. If you're homeless, yes, that is adversity. But also, if you're homeless and you don't have food and you don't have a job, now you are that poor oyster with a shovel full of sand. And if I say, well, maybe you should read a book, or maybe you should, do a podcast, that's not going to help the person who doesn't have a home, the person that doesn't have enough food, the person that doesn't have a job. No, we need to find a way to help that person in that situation so that they can grow, so that they can get to a point where they can learn. The same is true for those who have had no adversity. If I took someone with no adversity and my solution was remove all adversity, that's not going to help them grow either. So that's where there's this fine balance between determining where you are with your current state. Where are you with regard to adversity in your life? And only by getting us to a point where we've had just that right amount of adversity to build resilience, to be able to deal with these issues that come up on a daily basis in a healthy and positive way, are we going to be able to get to a point where we feel like we've improved, like we've got that, we're that oyster, that we have that beautiful pearl of wisdom, that pearl of whatever it is that we've developed over the years of adversity. So it's not easy, but if we do look at this from a systematic perspective, it's going to give us the ability to a better chance at getting ahead. You're listening to My Strategy. I'm your host, John M. Hawkins, coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. When we come back, we're going to talk about how you can put your strategy in action. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, John M. Hawkins, coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. The show is called My Strategy. We are on Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. And in case you missed this broadcast, you can listen on iHeartRadio or Apple iTunes. And if you'd like to have something covered in this show, send an email to talk@johnmhawkins.com. That's talk@johnmhawkins.com. Or you can call the show directly at 844-MY-STRATEGY. That's 1-844-MY-STRATEGY. Well, today I feel like we've been talking about a pretty important topic, given everything that's going on in life. We've been talking about life struggles and how they make us stronger. Talking about the life struggles, the things that don't kill you make you stronger. The impact of struggling on people, the concept of post-traumatic growth, challenges that help you grow and help you develop your strategy. Well, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, right? How many times have you heard that? Do the things that don't kill us really make us stronger? Resiliency is the face of adversity, which is the norm, but only when adversity comes in moderation. You see, if you are put in too much adversity, if you are in situations where there is no hope for you to grow, to become resilient, it can actually be extremely hurtful. As a result, we need to understand exactly where are we with regard to adversity. Are we in a situation where we are buried so far, we're buried and covered up with all this adversity that we can't grow? Are we in a situation where we have zero adversity and as a result are not growing? Or are we in a situation where we've become resilient and we now have the proper amount of tools to deal with things that come up? Seems like some people, though, always seem to win while others lose every time. And unfortunately, those who lose, it's always us, right? We're always losing. But in the hands of a skilled worker, a knife will be sharper than others. We talked about how successful people, if you are a knife and you are using the knife for something. If you took and beat that knife edge to the point where it was blunt, you wouldn't be able to do your job, would you? But if you slowly sharpened it after you were using it, you would have a nice sharp edge, and it would give you the ability to continue your work. So we want to think about struggles in that way. What are the things we're doing to help sharpen that blade? We then talked a little bit about post-traumatic growth and how when a crisis happens, we can either flourish or sink. Talked about some of the indicators of post-traumatic growth and how it can give us new appreciation for life, new possibilities. We talked about how greater challenges can help us grow, and about how even kids who are short in stature as a young child might adapt in other ways. So if they're not tall enough to play basketball or football, they might develop a sense of humor, focus on reading, writing, and other things. We talked about the analogy of a sand being stuck in an oyster. Now, if you dumped a shovel full of sand in an oyster, that poor oyster would not be able to grow. It's not going to grow 1,000 pearls, but it actually is going to kill the oyster. If you put no sand in the oyster would never grow a pearl. But a strategically placed single grain of sand in that oyster, the oyster now has the opportunity to live, to polish that sand over time, soften the edges, and create something beautiful. And I think that's what we're all trying to do, is we're all trying to figure out how do we create something beautiful in our lives. And from my perspective, struggles can help us, but they can also hurt us. And when we start to look at our current situation and are aware of those habits and those patterns, it gives us the ability to consciously prioritize and put us in a better position. That's all the time we have for this week. Appreciate you being here. You're listening to My Strategy. I'm the host, John M. Hawkins, and we'll see you next time.